I want to talk to you about the Ten Commandments because hidden within it, there is so much depth, as is the case with everything in the Torah. You just need to look a bit deeper and search, and you will find. And the reason I want us to do that this week is because this is the week that Jews around the world are reading the Torah portion of the giving of the Torah. And I wanted to talk to you specifically about that monumental moment of divine revelation, the Ten Commandments, because hidden within the text is infinite amounts of wisdom. And I wanted to share with you a bit of that today. You know, one of the interesting things, by the way, is people get a bit confused by this. These are the Ten Commandments here. The first on the left, the first 5 on the first tablet, and the second 5 on the second tablet. And people get a bit confused. They're like, well, hold on a second. I thought there's 613 commandments in Judaism, but then what's the 10 commandments about? So it actually turns out that the 10 commandments really are 10 categories. Yes, they are commandments, but actually they're 10 categories through which all of the Torah, all of the 613 commandments fit. A Torah scroll was written up until that point of revelation, up to the moment of revelation, and then after that it was continued to be divinely dictated by God to Moses and was written down as the events of the wilderness played out. But at this moment you had the giving of the 10 commandments. So as I say, there are categories through which all the commandments apply. What's really interesting, by the way, is that if you look at the gematria, which is the numerical value of the word Torah, I just want to get this up for you so you can see this. It comes to, you've got at the top a tuf, which is 400, then a vav, which is 6, then a resh, which is 200, then a hey, which is 5, which totals 611. Very interesting. And one of the explanations for why it is 611, now it's 2 off 613, which are all the commandments in the Torah. And one explanation is because God actually spoke, we're told, the first of the 2 of the 10 commandments. There are 2 commandments in which God spoke himself. They weren't said through Moses. What happened was God spoke to the big, great moment of revelation happened, and God said the first of the 2 10 commandments, but then the people basically kept dying every time God said a commandment because they were so overwhelmed by the presence of the divine, of the infinite, that their souls basically jumped out of their bodies and latched on to the infinite. It was that unprecedented moment of heaven and earth touching. And so they said to Moses, please stop. We can't keep doing this. Please, you speak, Moshe, and then we'll hear you this way so that this can be something that we can process in a slightly more calm manner. And so interesting that there's 2 commandments that God himself speaks, and the rest are from Moshe's mouth and Moshe writing down, which is why we call it the 5 books of Moses. So that's why you have those 2 missing. Now I want to talk to you about the categories, because this is where it gets super, super interesting. You should know, by the way, when I said that you have the 10 commandments are really 10 categories, that you can put all of the 630 commandments into one of those. Actually, turns out that those 2 that I mentioned that God said, really, you can put everything into the 2 that God said, which perhaps is why it was maybe essential that God had to say those 2 commandments, because I am the Lord your God, and then number 2, no idolatry. That, in some ways, is the essence of Torah. God saying, I'm the God your God, I want a relationship with you. Here are the do's. And then, no idolatry, which really means you shall not have other gods, which means don't be unfaithful to me. It's saying, it's the don'ts. Don't do this, don't do that. God is saying, be faithful to me, be mine. And number 2, and don't be someone else's. Don't have infidelity towards me. Don't betray me. Don't turn your back on me. That is the Torah in essence. That's what God is asking of us. He seeks relationship with all of us. So that's, I think, perhaps one of the ways of understanding why it was essential, imperative that God says those 2. And in some ways that sums up the whole Torah. But now I want to show you something fascinating, because the reason why I've wanted to provide this in English here, and you can see those arrows there pointing from the first 5 to the second 5, the 10 commandments. And the reason why they're split into 2 is as follows. So we're told that actually the two tablets represent two different types of commandments. The first 5 are about the relationship between man and God. The second 5 are a relationship between man and man. In Hebrew, we call this Bein Adam Lemakon, between man and God, Bein Adam Lechavero, between man and his fellow. But what's fascinating is that, and I learned this from Rabbi David Foreman pointed this out, this is a graphic that he produced, you can actually find a very clear parallel between number 1 and then number 6, as you can see here, number 2 and number 7. They link to each other. And it's basically showing us how it's really the same principle and the same premise, but just about in each case, it's about different interaction. One is about how you apply this premise and principle to a relationship with God, and the other one is about how you apply it to your fellow man. Let me show you. So let's see if you might be able to figure out the logic with me. So, first of the 10 Commandments is, I am the Lord your God. In other words, I am a creator. I am the one that put you here. Life is about your relationship with me. And that's why you're here in the first place. Now, do not murder. Well, murder is the ultimate violation of who we are, the created against his creator. It's actually the first great fracture and sin that happens in humanity when Cain kills Abel. Number 1 is saying, I'm the creator. I create. I give life. Do not murder is saying, you are not the one that gets to decide who gives, when life appears and when it is taken away. It's the Lord who gives life and takes it away, not you. And by murdering, you are violating that. You are dishonoring that. You are dishonoring the fact that God is creator and you are not. You're taking life into your own hands, but God is the giver of life. And so in that way, it's a denial of the creator himself. That's how we can see how 1 and 6 very clearly connect to one another. Now let's look at number 2 and number 7. You shall not have other gods. You shall not worship other gods. Now, idolatry today in many ways is hard for us to understand, that there was this deep imperative to want to worship other gods and bow down to them. We're told, by the way, for those of us who scoff and think, oh, well, I would never fall prey to that. We're told that it was so tempting that it was equivalent to the sexual temptation. And it was just commonplace, unfortunately. And this is perhaps a subject for another time that we can get into more detail. But we're told that the reason why we don't have it today is because the rabbis, the sages of old, thousands of years ago, in the times of the temple, they prayed for it to be removed, for the temptation of idolatry to be removed. Now, every power and every ability has its positives and its negatives. And so when they prayed for the negative temptation of idolatry to go away, also the power and ability of prophecy was taken away. God became harder to access, right? There's always, every power is neutral. So that kind of spiritual access became much more hidden as a result, but also the temptation towards idolatry went away. You should know that they also prayed at one point for the sexual temptation to be removed as well, but then people stopped having relations. And so the being fruitful and multiplying command was not really happening, and the concern was that this would have all kinds of long-term consequences, no less than population decline. So they decided that it would be worth it to restore the sexual urge, temptation there as well. Fascinating stuff. But today, the way we can understand idolatry is that it's more about worshipping things that lead you astray from God, making your life focused on something, on its end goal being about something other than serving God and serving the God's world. Right? When you worship, we all know what that can mean in different ways. Worshipping things that are not holy, are not sacred, and yet we make our life all about that. That's the way we can understand it today. And it really is about being unfaithful. That's what it is about infidelity. And God says that in the second of the 10 Commandments. The text itself says, God says, I am a jealous God, and, don't betray me. be faithful to me. Well, how does that connect to the 7th commandment? No adultery. Do I even need to spell it out? It's obvious. It's literally the same thing. They're both about don't be unfaithful. Then, number 3, do not take God's name in vain. Don't take something inappropriately, something that is not yours to take. Something that, and that is literally what taking God's name means. You're using the name of God, which is something holy and sacred and should be guarded and protected, and you're taking it for yourself inappropriately. That, we're told, is considered wrong. You shall not take things that are not yours to take. Well, how does that connect to do not steal? Pretty clear. Pretty obvious. God assigns everyone's portion in this world, and you should not take that which is not yours. That is abusing reality. Then we get to number 4, honoring Shabbat, honoring the Sabbath. Now I wonder, can you figure out the connection between that and do not bear false witness? It doesn't seem like there's such an obvious connection. Well, it turns out that actually the key, the sacred, essential, central moment of Shabbat, in which we are honoring the Sabbath, and more than that, we articulate the whole purpose of the day, which is that, as God says, for in 6 days God created the world, and on the 7th day he rested. That's what we're doing. We are standing as witnesses to testify that God did this. And that's what we do when we make Kiddush. We sanctify the Sabbath. And God says that we are part of Shabbat is acting as if we are witnesses making a testimony. That's why on the Friday night we recite these verses about God's creation, and you're really meant to do it with someone else, because witnesses always have to appear in at least pairs. So the theme of being a witness it runs throughout Shabbos, particularly in the Kiddush, the sanctifying of the Sabbath over wine, but central throughout the text where God tells us to keep the Sabbath. It's about because we are bearing witness to this fact of creation. And it turns out that is literally what the 9th commandment is about, not to bear false witness. Well, the connection now, I hope for you, is very, very clear indeed. Shabbos is about us being witnesses to the truth of creation. And the 9th one is about not to bear false witness, to pervert the truth, and testify falsely. It's the opposite in many respects of Shabbos. By the way, one of the reasons why Shabbat, the Sabbath, is such a fundamental of Judaism and Jewish practice is because it actually represents the whole purpose of creation. We're told that the 6 days of creation and the 7th day of rest represents the fact there's going to be 6,000 years of creation, of work, of humanity partnering with God to build this world in this fallen, quote-unquote, world, this lowest world. And then Shabbat represents the messianic era of the world to come, Olam Haba, the world that is perfected, where humanity and God can finally rest. You should know we're currently in the Hebrew year 5786, so we're nearly at the year 6000. The work is nearly complete. But that's why Shabbat is so central to everything. We're testifying about why we're here, the purpose of creation itself. And Jews we associate so much with this idea of being witnesses because of the Mount Sinai moment. Mount Sinai was the moment where we stood before God and witnessed him. He revealed himself to us. And this is a unique claim, by the way. This, I think, in many ways, should give everyone extreme pause for thought. No other religion, no other group, individual, has made a claim of group revelation of God. That God revealed himself to a group, to them and a group of people. Every other religion, it's one individual. They either have a revelation of God personally, whether it's Muhammad in a cave with the angel of Gabriel, Paul's vision on the road to Damascus, the Buddha, whatever it is, it's all private revelations. I think there is one in the Hindu tradition, but then everyone dies at the scenes. There's no one to, confirm, to testify to bear witness afterwards. Yes, there may also be other religious figures who perform miracles, but that Judaism says explicitly in Deuteronomy chapter 13, I think it is, that we're not miracles. Someone performing miracles does not make us change our ways. Yeah, people can perform miracles. People can manipulate nature. What we base our covenant with God on is the fact that he revealed himself to us. And this was done not just with a few people, but with an entire nation. We're talking millions of people. And amazingly, most of the world don't deny that this happened as a result. The Mount Sinai moment is acknowledged by Christians and Muslims as happening because most people appreciate that this is not a claim that you can pull off, a claim of group revelation, something like this, if it didn't happen. If it was easy to falsify, well, many other people would have made such a claim. They haven't. Fascinating food for thought. But the reason why I say this is because in the Shema, let me just get this up for you so you can see this. So this is the declaration of faith. It comes from the Torah. Jews say twice a day. At the top it says, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Now we say hear, O Israel, because we're reminding ourselves that the world may not see God. We may not be able to view him, but we know that he is there, and that's part of the challenge of life, to be faithful to that even when you don't see it. That's part of the fundamental Jewish perspective on life. That God knows we can't see him, but he's looking for us to go deeper and to know him when we might not see him. And actually knowledge is a far deeper, a far less shallow type of knowledge than a type of understanding rather than seeing alone. But notice how when on the far right is the word Shema, there's a bigger Hebrew letter, and then the last word on the far left at the top, there's a bigger Hebrew letter as well. Because if you put those two letters together, the ayin at the start and the daled at the end, it creates the word aid, which means witness. And indeed, that is part of the basis of our covenant with God, our faith in God. It's the fact that we were witnesses to him. So this runs very, very deep. Bearing witness to the God of Israel, to the creator of the universe. That is the essence of what it means to be a Jew. Now, lastly, this is where it gets super fascinating, and I'm sure many of you who may be looking further down the list in your head have been wondering, what on earth is the connection here? Honoring your father and mother and not coveting, not being jealous? Well, there's many ways in which you can take this. First of all, it's interesting to note, what is honor your father and mother doing on the left column, on the first of the 5 tablets? About our relationship with man and God. Surely it should be on our relationship between man and man. Great question, right? Well, one explanation I heard, and I think this was from Rabbi David Foreman, is this. Honoring your father and mother is actually really, yes, it's about your parents, but it's actually about honoring your creator. Because first of all, at a very basic level, your father and mother are partners with God in creating you. They are the agents of your creation alongside God. We're told there are 3 people in creating a child. There's the mother and the father, and there's God. So part of honoring the people that gave you life is, the creator of life, your creator, is honoring the people that he partnered with in doing that. The people that chose to have you. As Rabbi Manis Friedman says to me, for people that, complain about having tough problems with their parents and whatever, I know some of these things can get very challenging for people that they say it just becomes too difficult, but he said that the approach that people really ought to have is that it shouldn't be about expecting great, incomparable care and parenthood as the basis for one's respect for your parents. Lovely as that may be, but simply the fact that they are the ones that gave you life. If nothing else, even if you may have had a terrible childhood, a terrible existence, whatever it is. I certainly do, by the way, just in case anyone's thinking I'm projecting here. Not at all. But the point is that even if you did have that, the very fact that your parents gave you life itself, that is enough of a reason to create respect for your parents, to honor them. But taking it deeper, part of the message here that links it to not coveting is often the theme that you can have with people that are disgruntled with their parents is this sense of, it shouldn't have been this way. I shouldn't have had this upbringing. I shouldn't have been raised in this kind of environment with these parents, with this type of upbringing, with these kinds of challenges, with this kind of situation that I'm in, with all these kind of problems. This is not how it should have been. And in some ways, that is a denial of your purpose, of your mission. Oh no, the place you were born, the parents you had, is exactly your custom-made, your tailor-made mission for this world that God has set you on. And so, what is it that leads to coveting? It's thinking, I should have that. That thing that I don't have, that God didn't give me, should be mine. That thing that someone else has. Notice, by the way, that it's when it says do not covet, it talks about specific things. Your neighbour's this, your neighbour's that. Has no problem with you wanting more generally to have more wealth, better relationships, whatever it is. But specifically someone else's thing, that's dangerous, because that is not the truth. That is a dangerous way of orienting your reality, because you end up denying the fact that God created your blessings and your challenges specifically for you to fix your corner of the world. And so that's the connection with the two, because if you don't covet other people's possessions, other people's things, you're more likely to remember that and to honor your parents, because you recognize and remember that the place you came from, the parents you were given, are all part of your destiny, all part of your custom-made package for fixing the world in your own way. And so that, I think, is a really powerful connection. Now, there's so much that we could talk about in the Ten Commandments, and maybe we'll do future segments on this. I'm thinking I want to start doing more Torah segments like this as well. I'd love to know from you in the comment section the kind of stuff that you want to hear about as well on. But other thing that I want to share with you before we finish is this. Notice as well that if we start off with the first part of the Ten Commandments and the last part, there's one theme that connects the two sides. At the start, God says, I'm the Lord your God. And when talking about not having other gods, he says, for I am a jealous God. And then at the end, we're told, do not covet, do not be jealous. So one of the themes that connects the beginning and the end of the Ten Commandments is the theme of jealousy. How can we make sense of that? Well, I think part of the underlying message is this. When people think about God as a jealous God, I think we kind of often brush that under the carpet. We don't think about that. It's quite an unusual way to think about God. We often think about God as being completely all-powerful, all-knowing, completely settled, perfect, and we're the ones with the problem. But no, God says he's a jealous God, which means he jealously, zealously desires a relationship with Israel, with humanity. He desires to come down to earth. He really wants us. It's a remarkable thing to think about. It's a radical revelation. That is what the revelation of God was really about at Mount Sinai. The big revelation was how much God really desires us, how much he really needs us. Sadly, other religions today have twisted it all the way around and said, no, God is completely fine. He doesn't need anything. You're the needy one. You're in trouble. What was such a revelation to us was how much God desires us, to enter into covenant with us, to have a relationship with us, to dwell here on earth. The revelation was God is coming down to earth. He came to meet us down to earth at Mount Sinai. And so it finishes by saying, do not covet, don't be jealous. In other words, don't you think that you are the needy one, that you are the one with the problem that needs to be solved, that you are the one that needs everything to go exactly your way. No. God is saying, I am the one who created you, who created this world, because I'm seeking you out. And the danger of life going astray is to think that life is all about getting all of your needs completely matched up perfectly with how you want it, because then you're actually missing the whole point of creation, which is not that you're needy, but that you are needed. So much more to say about this, but I thought this might be something you'd all enjoy. And I also want to mention that we have created another Jewish Wisdom, Judaism whirlwind tour in our new JTV Plus documentary called Heaven, Hell and the Afterlife, how the radical Jewish take on these subjects changes how you understand everything about life. Let me show you the trailer for that, and if you want to watch the full thing, you can click the link below right now in the video description. Across the world, the afterlife is described in simple terms. Heaven above, hell below, the devil waiting to tempt you, and a humanity born in original sin. But Judaism tells a story that is older, deeper, and far more hopeful. Less obsessed with fear and more rooted in purpose. A story where the soul is not born guilty, but born noble. Where the body is not the enemy, but the partner. Where the devil isn't God's rival, but his assistant, because Judaism has no second power. Where hell exists, but not forever. Where heaven exists, but not as the final destination. And where the real end of the human story is resurrection, not escape. Judaism views history as a mission, not a mistake. Other civilizations teach that we are here to earn our way into heaven. Judaism teaches that we are here to bring heaven down to earth. And to understand what happens after we die, we first have to understand why we're here in the first place. In this JTV Plus documentary, we're going to reveal the Jewish vision of life after death. One of the most misunderstood ideas, but if understood correctly, can transform your very understanding of life itself. To watch this JTV Plus documentary and access much more premium content, click on the link in the video description.